Welcome to my nightmare. Yeah. That's right. That was me watching Hillary Clinton on MSNBC last night. That is my nightmare. And unfortunately, I did it. I did it for you guys on a Tuesday morning. Great to have you here on KCMO 95.7 FM. That was like right on cue, John. We didn't even plan that to start the show.
How about that?
That was very well done. So, yeah, I know. Before you leave us, and I know some of you heard the name Hillary Clinton, so you're going to leave. Please don't do that. I was thinking to myself, gosh, who are the two people I really want to hear from yesterday after a second assassination attempt against Donald Trump? I am dying to hear from Hillary Clinton. I'm dying to hear from Joe Biden. I mean, at least one of those two is the sitting president of the United States. Yes, he still is, believe it or not. But I thought, wow, that's some judgment. Rachel Maddow, MSNBC, doing the primetime show yesterday and deciding we need to hear from Hillary Clinton. Said nobody ever in that moment. And I hate to do this on the fly, Mark, but I'm not seeing the clip there on the 917 page. I know it's in the folder, so please pull that up for me if you could.
Nobody wants to hear from Hillary, including Bill.
Including Bill.
And Chelsea.
And Chelsea. And apparently Mark, he won't even put the audio cut where it needs to be for me here. All right, you ready? Mark was trying to make sure I wouldn't play the audio clip to start the show. That's what was going on.
Trying to save us from ourselves.
Yeah.
Trying to help.
All right, enough of that. Play the damn Hillary Clinton clip. Let's just get it over with already.
And I don't understand why it's so difficult for the press to have a consistent narrative about how dangerous Trump is. The late, great journalist Harry Evans one time said that, journalists should, really try to achieve objectivity. And by that, he said, I mean, they should cover the object. Well, the object in this case is Donald Trump, his demagoguery, his danger to our country and the world, and stick with it.
Okay, just what we needed. Hey, what happened to, turning down the temperature? Dangerous, demagoguery. What happened to that charade that so many talked about back in mid-July when Trump had his ear taken off, but suddenly now, hey, I mean, the guy just had a long-range rifle pointing through a fence hole, and thankfully there was a Secret Service agent one hole ahead who noticed it, because if that Secret Service agent did not notice it, who knows how things would look dramatically and drastically different in this country today. But then there's Hillary Clinton going up there and fanning the flames. But once again, everything is Donald Trump's fault. See, it's Trump's fault that he's being targeted by would-be assassins. It's Trump's fault that the country apparently is going downhill. They act like he's the guy who's currently in office. And then they get to use words like dangerous, demagogue, and we're just supposed to sit here and say, oh, okay, sure, that makes sense. I mean, look at this headline from Tom Nichols. He writes for The Atlantic. Tom Nichols wrote yesterday in The Atlantic, Donald Trump is using another possible attempt on his life to inflame tensions in America, which is one more reason he should never be president again. That is an amazing commentary from somebody. Trump being targeted by assassins twice in 2 months is the reason that he should never be president again. These people have never looked in a mirror. They wouldn't know how to look in the mirror. We actually just bought a new one for the house, so if they need to borrow a mirror, I can hook them up. It's only a 24-incher, but might be big enough for their heads.
Vampires don't see the reflection.
Well, that's a good point. They don't. I wonder how much of that is going on here. But the reaction that you've gotten over the last 24 hours in the wake of this is stunning. There is just no ability to self-reflect. And amazingly, two things can be true at once here. Does Donald Trump use rhetoric that can be inappropriate at times? Sure, absolutely. I wish he would tone it down. No doubt in my mind about that. There hasn't been for the better part of 8 years. But for the inability of these individuals who have played just as large, if not a larger role, in the political climate that we find ourselves in today, because Donald Trump is one man. They are a media establishment, networks of thousands of employees with billions of dollars behind them. And they don't realize that they are part of the problem and that they have been part of the problem and that they have allowed people like Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden to get up there and say some of the things that they have said in recent years and not even flinch is stunning. So then you get Joe Biden, who, by the way, was speaking last night at the HBCU week in Philadelphia. And Joe Biden commented on what happened down in South Florida on Sunday as well. And the president of the United States, who, yes, I just like to do a welfare check once in a while, make sure he is alive and well and is still the president of the United States. We have confirmed that he is still the president of the United States. And he said this.
Before I begin, I want to make a quick reference. The attempted assassination against our former president in Florida yesterday. I commend the Secret Service for the expert handling of the situation. And the former president is protected from harm and the subject is in custody. An acting head of the Secret Service is in Florida today assessing what happened and determining whether any further adjustments need to be made to ensure the safety of our former president. Let me just say, there is no, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, those of you who know me, many of you do, no place in political violence for political violence in America. None. Zero. Never.
Okay. All right. Step in the right direction. Yeah. Okay. Sure. But once again, empty words. Because when this happened back in July, there was like 3 to 4 days where maybe things were a tad calmer. And then it was back to the same old nonsense. Same old nonsense. And Joe Biden continued.
I've always condemned political violence. I always will in America. In America, we resolve our differences peacefully at the ballot box, not at the end of a gun. America suffered too many times the tragedy of an assassin's bullet. It solves nothing and just tears the country apart. We must do everything we can to prevent it and never give it any oxygen. Folks, now to today's event. It's an honor to recognize HBCU excellence in our nation.
Yeah, all right. Enough of that. Let's get to the HBCUs. He spoke for about a minute. Hey, please don't shoot Donald Trump. That wouldn't be very nice. Now let's get to the real story here and why I'm here to talk to you in Philadelphia. And I'm still trying to translate what he said there at the very end.
It's an honor to recognize HBCU excellence in our nation.
Whoa, he's on the good stuff. That was the good stuff last night. They juiced him up nice and good. But I listened to Joe Biden's comments there, and they're just words. Now, I know he's never been the most eloquent speaker, but they're just words. There's no feel to them. There's no meaning to them. It's just like, this is what I have to say, so I'll say it. I'll get this out of the way, right out of the gates with my speech, and then we'll move on to why I'm here. Because I really don't want to say any of this. That's what it sounded like from Joe Biden right there. And this is not going to get better. I genuinely wish that it would, and I think every decent American wants it to. But there are 49 days to the election, and there's no evidence to suggest that things are going to calm down. And if you're sitting there and saying, well, it's all Trump's, no, it's not all Donald Trump's fault. It's not. Could he do better in this department? Sure, absolutely. But to sit there and say it's all his fault is completely disingenuous and a flat-out lie. Now, what do we know about this individual? What are we learning about the person who was involved on Sunday? We've got details on that coming up. Also, huge meetings taking place tonight in our area that could determine the future of a couple of communities. We'll tell you about that at the bottom of the hour. Pete Mundo on 95.7 FM, KCMO. Some of the best reporting done last night on Ryan Wesley Routh, the man arrested in South Florida on the second assassination attempt against Donald Trump, came courtesy of the Wall Street Journal. This came down late last night. The gunman suspected of attempting to assassinate Donald Trump acted so erratically during his years as a pro-Ukraine activist that other Americans who encountered him flagged his behavior to U.S. authorities. So this guy showed up in Ukraine as an activist and was so nuts and such a weirdo that he was being reported by his fellow U.S. citizens overseas. And as is oftentimes the case, the FBI did nothing about it. I mean, this is another example. While the FBI is busy making sure that, parents are abiding by the rules at school board meetings. You got whack jobs like this running all over the place, and they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to close that investigation. Nothing to see here. We'll keep moving on. So here are some of the details on this guy. Routh was in Ukraine in 2022. He was hoping to actually join the fight. But Chelsea Walsh, a nurse who had several encounters with Routh in Kiev in 2022, said his threats of violence worried her so much that she conveyed her concerns to a Customs and Border Protection officer in an hour-long interview in Washington, D.C.'s Dulles Airport in June of 22. Walsh told the officer during the interview that Routh was among the most dangerous Americans she met during her month-and-a-half-long stint in Ukraine. She showed the officer a notebook listing more than a dozen names of Americans and others whose actions alarmed her. Routh's name was at the very top. When the officer noted that there was a lot of names, she replied, of all the people on there, Ryan Routh should be number one. She told this to the Wall Street Journal in an article that dropped last night. Customs and Border Protection didn't immediately respond to inquiries about the meeting. Routh's behavior had been flagged by the FBI to the FBI in the past, though not in connection with Ukraine. A tipster told the FBI in 2019 that Routh had a firearm despite being a felon, but when questioned further would not verify providing the information, an FBI official said on Monday. Boy, for the people who are all about like, hey, we need more gun laws, they sure don't do a very good job of enforcing the laws that are currently on the books. The guy shouldn't have a firearm. He's a felon, and people alert law enforcement to that, and it's like, oh, yeah, nothing to see here. Oh, well, whoops. His activities related to Ukraine brought him to the attention of a large group of people, many of who grew quickly suspicious. Routh was well known among volunteer aid groups in Ukraine as a fraudster and kind of a whack job, said Sarah Adams, a former CIA officer who helped run a network that linked 50 aid groups to share information and coordinate humanitarian and volunteer efforts. He claimed to be working with the Ukrainian government to recruit foreign fighters, but he actually wasn't. Ukraine's International Legion, which handles foreign volunteers, has denied having any ties with Routh. So this guy was a total nut job. He would try to convince people that he was some hotshot over there in Ukraine. He was a fraudster and a huckster, and there were signs of it. People complained about it, and nothing ever came of it. In Kiev, Ryan Routh would dye his hair blue and yellow, the colors of the Ukrainian flag. How many people in Prairie Village just got a new idea, by the way? Jeez, okay. And frequently wore red, white, and blue American flag T-shirts. He put up official-looking posters around Kiev urging foreigners looking for ways to aid Ukraine to text him. So what would he put his Cash App handle on there and say, hey, send me $50. I'll make sure it gets right into the hands of the Ukrainians. Don't worry. I got you covered. Here's my Venmo. This guy was a scumbag before he was a potential assassin of a former president who also happens to be the GOP frontrunner. Now, this nurse, Ms. Walsh, who we talked about earlier in this conversation, she's from Palm Beach, West Palm Beach, which, by the way, if you know South Florida, there is a big difference between Palm Beach and West Palm Beach. Palm Beach, the homes are like 20 million to 30 million. West Palm Beach, they're like 1 to 2 million. So, in that part of the world, that's a big difference. She texted the number of one of Routh's posters when she first got to Kiev, thinking it would direct her to a volunteer organization. Instead, Routh asked her to meet him and others in Kiev's Central Square to hold up flags from different countries to make a statement about global support for Ukraine. She did. She went there. She held up an Irish flag. At that point, she said he seemed eccentric but not dangerous. That obviously changed over time. He talked about wanting to kill Vladimir Putin, wanting to kill Kim Jong-un, and she recalled him talking about Donald Trump and Joe Biden, though she said she could not recall if he threatened either of them. This is somebody who was on the radar of the FBI. This is somebody who the FBI knew. This nurse, Miss Walsh, filed an online report with the FBI outlining her concerns about Routh. Neither Customs nor the FBI followed up with her, she said. the FBI did not immediately respond to a request for comment from the Wall Street Journal. But what happened yesterday or on Sunday? After the attempt on Donald Trump's life, she called the FBI tip line, reported her concerns about Routh again in a 22-minute conversation. We have such dereliction of duty at the highest levels of our bureaucracies. We have bureaucracies that are out of touch. We have bureaucracies that have completely misplaced their priorities. And what does it result in? Potentially former presidents getting assassinated and GOP frontrunners. That's what we have going on right now. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, this should bother you. Because if you're a tax-paying citizen, the whole point of these bureaucracies that have become way too bloated and way too big is, well, you would think if it's too big, if it's too bloated, at least maybe we're extra safe, right? Better to have too many hands on deck than not enough. Well, that's apparently not the case. It's not. You can tie this back to, school shooters who oftentimes people know about, whether it's local law enforcement or further up the food chain, know about them, whether it's, what's going on here with this guy Routh. Oftentimes, these people just don't show up with clean records and try to do heinous acts like this. It comes from somewhere. And when you have law enforcement who has these people on their lists, fellow Americans report them and nothing happens, it makes you wonder, at least it makes me wonder, what's the point of any of it? What's the point of any of these organizations if they can't do their basic responsibilities and do them well? Pete Mundo on KCMO on a Tuesday morning, kicking it off with you. Thanks for being here. Also streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. There are two massive meetings tonight in our area, Kansas City community, that could play a big role in shaping the future of these communities. We'll tell you where next. Couple of big meetings tonight I want to make sure that you're aware of. One is a story that we have been following very closely over the last several weeks, and that's happening in Lenexa. Tonight, the Lenexa City Council will vote on the future of the homeless shelter off I-35 and 95th Street at the La Quinta Inn and Suites location that has gotten so much attention. So that is happening tonight, 7 p.m., Lenexa City Hall. This is an abomination of an idea for so many levels. Not only is it a low barrier shelter where there's no requiring the people staying at this theoretical shelter to be, forget American citizens, not even Johnson County residents, Lenexa residents, Overland Park residents, nothing like that. Nope, just send them on in. Anybody and everybody. Have a great time, get a bed at the La Quinta, and, go on your merry way. There are millions of dollars in taxpayer monies that are being asked to be contributed to this theoretical homeless shelter. And there's nothing to suggest that they're going to do what needs to be done to preserve the current neighborhood that exists in that area. Now, I know there's a lot of businesses. There's not a lot of residential in that immediate part of town. But we had calls from small business owners there in that area saying, this would not be good for me. And no one cares about me. And who's looking out for me? So that is happening tonight at Lenexa City Hall at 7 p.m. And this comes just a few days after a letter was sent on Thursday from the Johnson County Board of Commissioners to the Lenexa City Council, urging the council to approve this homeless services center coming up tonight. So they are trying to strong-arm the Lenexa City Council. Mike Kelly and this county commission is trying to strong-arm the residents of Lenexa and the entire city to do what they want them to do, because they chose to put the cart before the horse. They chose to say, yes, we're going to spend $10 million on this project between the building, the maintenance, and all these things. And, Lenexa has to go along with it? Yeah, sure, don't worry. We'll figure that out when we get there. That's been their attitude. And there's a reason they've done it this way. They have tried to cram this thing down on Lenexa. And right now, you, the Lenexa resident, has been standing between the county commission cram down and City Hall. The good news is this, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. The Lenexa Planning Commission voted 9-0 to recommend the city deny a special use permit to build the shelter at the motel. So that doesn't mean the city council has to go along with it. But that's a major step in the right direction that the Lenexa Planning Commission recommended by a 9-0 vote. Not 5-4, not 6-3, 9-0 to deny a special use permit to build this shelter at the motel. So I don't know how, if you're on the Lenexa City Council, you could possibly vote for this thing. And it should be watched very closely tonight by Lenexa residents. But it's not just about Lenexa. All of Johnson County is being asked to chip in money to help fund the shelter, which will be run by Restart. So all of you, if you are a Johnson County resident, you are going to be asked to chip in money for this shelter. And before you start screaming about, well, it's not, we need the homeless shelter, got to help the homeless. Yes, there are great organizations that help the homeless in and around the Kansas City area. But putting it right there on I-35 and 95th Street is asking for trouble. You know how much drug trafficking comes up and down I-35? Tremendous amounts of drug trafficking. Potentially human trafficking, all happening right here in our backyard because you got a major interstate coming right through town. And if you don't think that location could be a location that gets used and abused by some of the worst actors in this country right now, you're kidding yourself. It's completely ridiculous. And the taxpayers have got to stand up to it and say, no, I'm putting my foot down. Yeah, I want to help people, but this is not the best way to do it, especially when you guys won't even put a requirement on this shelter that it be for at least American citizens, never mind Johnson County residents. So that is happening tonight, and I want to make sure that folks in Lenexa are aware of it, that they're potentially attending, and that they've already had their voice heard. But there is something to be said for power in numbers. Power in numbers matters and makes a difference. So that's tonight at 7 o'clock. Now, the other thing happening tonight at 7 o'clock is in Olathe, where there's going to be public comments that you can share regarding this proposed amusement park on the southwest corner of 119th and Renner. They want to turn it into an entertainment district using, I hate to say the word, star bonds. They want to go to star bonds. Yes, it's such a can't-miss opportunity. They need the government's help to prove that it's going to work. Yes, that's how these star bonds end up operating. So what they want to put there is a mini amusement park. Now, not like Worlds of Fun or Disney World, a much smaller one with only about 20 rides. But they'll have a featured roller coaster, a carousel, a Dumbo-like ride that goes up, zip line, a Ferris wheel. That's what should happen when all these city councils meet. Like, they should have a walkout song, and it's just clown music because they're all complete clowns all across Johnson County and, for most part, the entire metro. They are clown shows. Oh, we don't want to be behind the development curve, so we've got to give out subsidies and have incentives. Oh, I know, the star bonds don't cost the taxpayers anything. Come on. It's such a great idea. They can't just do it the free market way. They got to get help to do it. Are you kidding me? So these 63 acres of land could also transform on the southwest corner of 119th and Renner into a medical facility, sports arena, hotel, restaurants, and apartments. Gosh, what's missing? Is this 63 acres or 63,000 acres? What else are you guys trying to fit on here, for crying out loud? And would help sports that don't get as much attention: gymnastics, dance, volleyball, and hockey. Yeah, there's definitely not enough attention on gymnastics and dance in this town. I say that as a father of 3 girls. I think there's plenty, as far as I can tell. So tonight, September 17th, you're going to have an opportunity to go in front of the Olathe City Council. Thank you very much. Yes. Yep. Every city council should do this walkout song. Kind of like basketball players do, or, Patrick Mahomes does when he's coming out of the tunnel before the game. They could all jog out.
You know, the Globetrotters do the thing to Sweet Georgia Brown.
Yes. That's perfect. Gosh, all of them are totally clueless. Jim is in Lenexa. What's up, Jim? You're on KCMO.
Yeah, hey, Pete. Some of the illicit activities that come with that homeless shelter are already active at 95th and I-35. There's a convenience store there, and if you go there anywhere from 7 p.m. until about 2 or 3 in the morning, you will see provocative dressed women sitting at the tables in front of that convenience store getting picked up in different vehicles and then, returned and all that good stuff. So the activity's there already. It would just move it from one location to another.
So is that your suggestion that it's still a really bad idea, or that it may not be that big of a deal because it's happening anyway?
Oh, no, it's a bad idea. I mean, this is, it's a bad idea. It's just, why would you do that? You know, the activities that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
It just would, it just would explode. But the activity's there now, and I'm sure I haven't checked any of the police reports for that area, but you'll see it. Anybody can go by there, and you'll see it. There's
now, you talking about that quick trip there on the, I guess it'd be the southeast corner?
Yeah. I just didn't want to bring, no,
it's fine.
Yeah. You go there. I've seen it multiple times. I got a house just south of the Oak Park Mall.
Yeah, I've been to that quick trip a handful of times, but never when it's dark. So I don't get out much when it's dark with my schedule. But yeah, no, I'm not surprised by that. I mean, it's such a major thoroughfare. There's so much action there. I'm not shocked by that at all.
Oh yeah, they're getting picked up in high dollar cars, everything from work vans to high dollar cars. Yeah.
Jeez. Okay. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it, man. Another reason to get out there and vote no. 913-408-7957. Pete, on the amusement park at 119th and Renner, you're a winner in life, and you must contribute to this new amusement park. Maybe you could sponsor one of the rides with KCMO. Yeah, I'll pass on that. I'll pass on that one. Hard pass. Vote no. Get out to the Olathe City Council meeting tonight. Make your voice heard. 913-408-7957. Charlie Gasparino, Fox Business Network, is going to be here coming up at 7:05. The Fed is set to begin a 2-day meeting today. Are they going to be cutting interest rates? It looks like the answer is yes. The question is by how much. Charlie Gasparino at 7:05. Coming up next, we've got an update. All those threats in Springfield, Ohio against schools and hospitals, well, we learned something about them that is not going to shock you, and we'll get to it next.
Hey, it's Dan Bongino. Tune into my show every day from noon to 2 p.m. on KCMO, now on FM 95.7.
My mentions on social media blowing up the last bunch of days because if you had the audacity to possibly talk about Springfield, Ohio through a responsible lens and say, I don't know what's going on with Fluffy the cat, but I do know a community bringing in 20,000 migrants to a city of 40,000 people is unsustainable. Well, you were called a racist. You were called somebody who doesn't care about the immigrant population or some ridiculous notion along those lines. That's what you were called. That's what people said. On media, on social media, I got mentioned all the time about it. And then over the last week, these threats started coming in to Springfield, Ohio schools and hospitals and places like that. And it was like, well, hold on a second. That's terrible. Nobody should be threatening schools or hospitals in Springfield, Ohio for any reason. No one should ever do such a thing. But that doesn't mean that you can't talk about a legitimate problem that communities are having all over the country and that it is not sustainable to bring in 20,000 people to a 40,000 person city and not expect there to be tensions and not expect there to be issues for the American citizens who live there. It's indisputable. There's going to be problems. Well, now we found out yesterday, according to Mike DeWine, the Ohio governor, that all 33 threats that came into Springfield, Ohio, every single one of them were hoaxes, and many of them came from bad actors overseas.
At least 33 separate bomb threats, each one of which has been responded to, and each one of whom has been found as a hoax. So 33 threats, 33 hoax. I want to make that very, very clear. None of these had any validity at all. We know that people are very, very concerned, and we have taken some actions, and in a moment I'll let Andy Wilson go into more detail. But we've moved resources into Springfield. So I want to say to the parents in Springfield, these hoaxes, these threats have all been hoaxes. None of them have panned out. We have people, unfortunately, overseas who are taking these actions. Some of them are coming from one particular country. We think that this is, one more opportunity to mess with the United States, and they're continuing to do that. So we cannot let the bad guys win. Our schools must remain open.
There you go. That's Ohio Governor Mike DeWine saying all 33 threats turn out to be hoaxes, every single one of them, and a majority of them are coming from overseas. Now, amazingly, when I Google this, not a lot's coming up. There's a story here from the New York Post. There's some local stories that I've got here. WCPO 9 in Cincinnati, Real Clear Politics. But you would think that, okay, this would be front and center headline news across the board. That you would be happy to some extent about this, that it's just bad actors overseas who are trying to sow division amongst the American people. But no, that's not what's happening. Instead, it's like we lead the way with another threat in Springfield, Ohio. And then the story, when the facts come out, gets totally buried. The media is not going to give nearly as much attention to the fact that these threats are coming from bad actors overseas because that doesn't benefit their cause. They want it to be, sick as this is to say, but I think it's indisputable, they want it to be basically a bunch of Rube Trump supporters who are threatening to, blow up schools and hospitals in Springfield, Ohio because of Haitian migrants overrunning the city or having, too many people in a city that is too small of a size. That's what they want to see happen. And that's twisted. That's sick. That's disturbing to me. And it should be disturbing to any decent American. But I don't know how else to read into the fact that they pushed the story all last week, and then yesterday when the facts come out on the story saying, hey, this stuff is coming from bad actors overseas, it's like nothing. Nothing whatsoever. Now, with that being said, as I was thinking about this story yesterday, I started thinking back to a couple of years ago. For all the notions of, hey, if you are against 20,000 people coming into a city of 40,000 people, well, that says something about you, and you must be the R word. I remember a time, not all that long ago, when 50 illegal immigrants showed up on glitzy Martha's Vineyard, an island of 15,000 people. And they were on the island and they were off the island within 24 hours. And let's not forget this Martha's Vineyard resident who explained why these 50 individuals couldn't stay.
So, what are the most difficult challenges right now?
The difficult challenges are we have, at some point in time, they have to move from here to somewhere else, right? We don't have the services to take care of 50 immigrants, and we certainly don't have housing. We're in a housing crisis as we are on this island, and so we can't house everyone here that lives here and works here. We don't have housing for 50 more people.
Boy, the island of 15,000 does not have housing, does not have services for 50 people, 50. But if you suggest that the community of Springfield, Ohio, which has a population of about 40,000, doesn't have room for 20,000 extra people, well, what's wrong with you? What, do you hate immigrants? It's like, No, I'm just trying to make sure that the community can continue on as is. Yes, growth is good. If we have people that want to work here, that's a great thing. But at the same time, there's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a more sophisticated way to ingratiate people into a community versus just plopping 20,000 people down in a 40,000 person community and saying, good luck. But in Martha's Vineyard, 50 people, it's all good. Don't worry. They got the yard signs. They're sufficiently woke. No one's ever coming after them. Just keep those yard signs running strong. Charlie Gasparino of the Fox Business Network will be here next on the Fed's two-day meeting that could involve interest rate cuts next. My phone started blowing up yesterday. It must have been early afternoon. I don't know. 1, 2 o'clock, give or take. This article that was written in the Kansas City Defender. You may recall them as this online huckster media outlet that is always race-baiting various Kansas City news stories. So I guess they picked up on the interview we did a couple of weeks ago with Missouri Governor Mike Parson, where I asked him about Eric DeValcanaire, who is the former KCPD detective who is still sitting in prison. And I asked the governor about a potential pardon for Eric DeValcanaire. And what the governor said at the time on this show is, I don't like where he's at. Now, I firmly believe that pardon is going to come. I think it may be after the election, which I don't agree with, but I do think it's going to come for Eric DeValcanaire. It's going to be a couple more months. It doesn't make it any easier for Sarah and that family. But if I was to predict what exactly is going to happen on that front, it will be after the election, before a theoretical Mike Kehoe governorship begins. There's no way. Well, I think Mike Kehoe would pardon Eric DeValcanaire as well if he's the next governor of Missouri. I don't believe that Mike Parson wants to straddle his successor with something controversial like that right out of the gates. And I don't think that's what Mike Kehoe necessarily wants to start his tenure. He would do it if he had to, but I believe Parson will do it on his way out the door after the election coming up on November 5. That's my prediction. And that's just kind of reading between the lines here on some of what he said on this show and elsewhere. So the Kansas City Defender caught wind of this, and they write here, in a stunning and infuriating development, right-wing extremist Missouri Governor Mike Parson, in his final months of office, has all but promised a pardon or commutation for Eric DeValcanaire, the former Kansas City police detective convicted of killing Cameron Lamb, a black man. They really just whittle Cameron Lamb down to a black man. I mean, nothing more. That's all they describe him as, I guess, because that's all that matters to these people is the race of the individuals involved. They write here, Parsons' comments made during a far-right extremist radio show hosted by Pete Mundo,
such a nice man,
reveal a blatant disregard for justice and a full-throated support for brutal anti-black police violence. A full-throated support for brutal anti-black police violence.
Me.
Yeah.
Right there, full-throated.
Yes, thank you.
Project from your diaphragm.
Yes, use that diaphragm, John Anthony. Back to the old DJ days. That's right. Well, first off, I don't know what show they're necessarily listening to. I like to think that we're just kind of common sense radio here on KCMO, and that's what we do on a daily basis. But it's amazing how they frame this entire story. Full-throated support for brutal anti-black police violence. Everything with outlets like this, I mean, they make the Kansas City Star look moderate, and they have like 7 readers who are the wokest of the woke here in the Kansas City area, is all they are. But they make it seem like everything is about skin color. The facts of the case don't matter, right? Throw those out the window. They're completely irrelevant. Testimony from people at the scene don't matter. The fact that some of the key witnesses changed their story to support Cameron Lamb's side of the story, well, that doesn't matter, apparently. It's all just about fitting into the narrative. That's it. And the author of this piece is written by somebody who doesn't even put their full name in the article, a guy named Ryan S. And underneath the author, it says, we got to have the pronouns here, obviously, right? I mean, you got to have.
Come on, man.
You can't have the author's name, but don't worry, we got the pronouns figured out here. He, him, his, or they, them, theirs. I kid you not. The pronouns for the author are listed as he, him, his, or they, them, theirs. How am I supposed to take an author seriously? He doesn't know what he is, or she is, or they are. I don't understand that. How can
Just tell me your name, bro. I'll call you your name, Ryan S.
Yeah, I'll call you whatever you want to be called. I guess. Just give me a name. Give me something to work with here. They can easily label this show far-right extremist radio, but you can't tell me your name or tell me if you're a dude or a they. But I'm supposed to take you seriously as a journalist in this town. Please make it make sense. We're losing our minds here. Coming up on KCMO, Kansas lost how many jobs over the last year? People will tell you the economy's doing great, but how great is it really? We've got those numbers. Dave Traubert is here on that and more next in Tirade Tuesday in 1 hour.